Trisha's knees hit cold obsidian stone, the impact jarring through her bones as silver chains materialized around her wrists. The throne room stretched endlessly before her, black marble veined with starlight, pillars carved from shadow itself. And at the far end, a dais where 7 figures sat in judgment. She didn't know how she'd gotten here. One moment she'd been asleep in her cramped apartment above the bookstore, and the next, she'd woken falling through darkness into this nightmare realm where the air tasted of midnight and ancient magic. A mortal. The voice came from a woman with silver hair and eyes like frozen lakes. In the Shadow Court. How amusing. Trisha's heart hammered against her ribs. She tried to speak, but her throat had closed with terror. The chains burned where they touched her skin, not with heat, but with a cold so intense it felt like fire. Explain yourself. The speaker sat at the center of the day. 7. A man with sharp features and a crown that seemed to be made of crystallized darkness. Who sent you here to spy? I don't know where here is. Trisha's voice came out broken, barely more than a whisper. Please, there's been a mistake. I was sleeping. I don't know how I got here. Laughter rippled through the assembled court. Beautiful creatures with inhuman features who watched her with the detached interest of predators observing wounded prey. Trisha's eyes darted around the vast chamber, searching desperately for something, anything that made sense. That's when she saw him. He stood apart from the others, half hidden in the shadows near a massive pillar. Tall, with black hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes that glowed with an inner silver light. He wore armor that seemed to be forged from darkness itself, and when his gaze met hers, something inside Trisha's chest pulled tight, like a string being drawn taut. Recognition flooded through her, not of his face, but of something deeper. Her soul knew him, even though her mind held no memory. Lord Andrew. The crowned man spoke without looking away from Trisha. This mortal appeared in your quarters. Would you care to explain why a human girl materialized in the Shadow Realm, in the most secure wing of the palace? Andrew stepped forward, and Trisha watched him move with the predator's grace. His expression revealed nothing, but she caught the slight tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed once at his sides before he stopped before the dais. I was not in my quarters when the breach occurred, Your Majesty. How convenient. The silver-haired woman leaned forward, her lips curving into a cruel smile. A mortal in the Shadow Realm can only mean one thing. She was brought here deliberately. The question is by whom, and for what purpose? I swear I don't know anything about this place. Trisha's voice grew stronger even as her body trembled. I've never heard of a Shadow Realm. I don't even believe in magic. The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You don't believe in magic. Yet here you kneel, bound in chains forged from starlight and shadow. She turned to the crowned man. Your Majesty, I propose we extract the truth from her. My interrogators are quite skilled. Terror spiked through Trisha's chest. She'd heard enough in those words to understand that interrogation meant torture. Her hands jerked against the chains, and that's when it happened. The chains shattered, not broke, shattered. They exploded into fragments of silver light that rained down around her like falling stars. Trisha gasped, staring at her hands as dark purple light flickered beneath her skin, tracing patterns up her arms like living tattoos. The light pulsed with her heartbeat, growing brighter with each passing second. The throne room fell silent. Impossible. The king rose from his throne, and for the first time, Trisha saw fear in an immortal's eyes. "Seize her! Now!" But before the guards could move, Andrew was there. He moved faster than Trisha's eyes could track, positioning himself between her and the advancing soldiers. His own power erupted around him, shadows that writhed and coiled like living things, forming a barrier that the guards couldn't penetrate. "No one touches her." "You dare defy your king?" The crowned man's voice shook with fury, but underneath it, Trisha heard something else. Fear. "Step aside, Lord Andrew, or you will share whatever fate awaits this creature. She is under my protection." The silver-haired woman's eyes widened, then narrowed to slits. "Your protection?" She looked between Andrew and Trisha, and something calculating entered her expression. "By the old laws, you can only extend protection to members of your house, your bloodkin, or—" She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "Your bonded mate." Trisha's breath caught. Bonded mate? She didn't even know this man. But that pull in her chest intensified, that feeling of recognition, of belonging. And when she looked at Andrew's profile, the hard line of his jaw, the protective stance, something inside her whispered that the silver-haired woman was right. "Lady Vesper, your eagerness to interrogate a young woman who has done nothing wrong speaks poorly of your character." "Done nothing wrong?" Vesper's voice rose. "She carries shadow magic! Look at her arms, at that power! Only those of pure Shadow Fae bloodline can channel that magic, and yet she claims to be mortal." She pointed at Trisha with a trembling finger. "She's either a spy who's stolen power that doesn't belong to her, or she's a half-blood, abomination hiding in the mortal realm." The word abomination hit Trisha like a physical blow. The purple light beneath her skin flared brighter, responding to her emotional state. She didn't understand what was happening to her, didn't understand any of this, but she understood hatred when she heard it. "I'm not a spy!" Trisha pushed herself to her feet, her legs unsteady but her voice growing stronger. "And I'm not an abomination. I'm just a woman who worked in a bookstore and fell asleep in her own bed." "Enough." Andrew's voice cut through the rising tension. He turned to face the king, and Trisha saw the resolve in his eyes. "Your Majesty, I invoke the right of sanctuary. This woman is under my protection, and I claim the traditional 3 days to present her case before the court." The king stared at Andrew for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sat back on his throne with a heavy sigh. "You ask much, Lord Andrew. The right of sanctuary has not been invoked in this court for centuries." "The law remains, Your Majesty. 3 days." "Very well." The king waved a hand, and the guard stepped back. 3 days, Lord Andrew. But know this. If she proves to be a threat to this realm, not even your position will save her. Or you. Andrew bowed, then turned to Trisha. His hand extended toward her, and she saw the truth in his eyes. Not just protection, but something deeper. Something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She placed her trembling hand in his, and the moment their skin touched, that purple light exploded around them both, wrapping them in shadows and starlight. "What's happening to me?" "Come with me. I'll explain everything." He led her from the throne room, his grip on her hand never loosening. Trisha felt the weight of hundreds of eyes following them, heard the whispers that erupted then, the moment they passed through the massive doors. She didn't understand this world, didn't understand the magic burning beneath her skin, but she understood one thing clearly. Andrew had just put everything on the line for her. They walked through corridors of shadow and starlight, past windows that looked out onto an impossible sky filled with 3 moons and constellations she'd never seen. Servants pressed themselves against walls as they passed, their eyes wide with fear or curiosity, or both. Finally, Andrew stopped before an ornate door carved with symbols that seemed to move when Trisha looked directly at them. "These are my private quarters. You'll be safe here." The door swung open, revealing a room that defied her expectations. She'd anticipated something dark and forbidding, but instead found a space filled with books, thousands of them, lining shelves that reached from floor to ceiling. A massive fireplace burned with silver flames, and the furniture was comfortable, lived in. It looked like the home of someone who spent more time reading than attending court. Andrew released her hand, and immediately Trisha felt the loss of that contact. The purple light beneath her skin began to fade, leaving her feeling hollow and cold. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that she wore only the oversized t-shirt and shorts she'd gone to bed in. "I don't suppose you have any clothes I could borrow?" His expression softened fractionally. "Of course." He moved to an armoire and pulled out a dark robe that would have dragged on the floor for her, but would at least cover her adequately. "There's a bathing room through that door. Take your time." Trisha accepted the robe with trembling hands. "Thank you for what you did back there. I don't understand what's happening, but thank you." "You have nothing to thank me for, Trisha." She froze. "How do you know my name? I never told you my name." Andrew was quiet for a long moment, and Trisha saw conflict war across his features, the desire to tell her everything battling against the need to protect her from truths she might not be ready to hear. "I've known your name for a very long time." "What does that mean? How could you know me? I've never been here before. I didn't even know this place existed." "I know. You weren't supposed to know. You weren't supposed to ever come here." He ran a hand through his black hair, looking more human in that gesture than he had since she'd first seen him. "But your magic awakened. The wards I placed around you must have failed." "Wards? You placed wards around me?" Trisha's mind reeled. "How long have you been watching me?" 23 years. Since the night you were born." The words hung in the air between them like a physical thing. Trisha felt her knees go weak, and she sank into the nearest chair. 23 years. Her entire life, this stranger, this immortal lord of shadows, had been watching her, protecting her. But why? "I don't understand." "I know. And I will explain everything, but first, you need to rest. The transition between realms is exhausting for mortals, and your magic—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "Your magic shouldn't have manifested this violently. Something triggered it." Trisha remembered the moment just before she'd been pulled here. She'd been dreaming. In the dream, someone had been calling her name, a voice filled with such longing and desperation that it had made her chest ache. She'd been trying to reach the source of that voice when everything had shattered around her. "I heard someone calling me in my dream." Andrew's expression went very still, and she saw something flash in his silver eyes, recognition and fear. "Who? What did they sound like?" "I don't know. The voice was wrong somehow, like it was trying to sound kind but couldn't quite manage it." She shivered at the memory. "It said it had been searching for me, that it was time to come home." Vesper. The woman from the court? Why would she? Because you're not just any Shadow Fae half-blood, Trisha. You're the daughter of the last Shadow Queen. He moved to the window, staring out at the alien sky. And Vesper wants you dead. Trisha's world tilted. She gripped the arms of the chair, her knuckles going white. I'm the daughter of a queen? Your mother was Queen Nadia, the most powerful Shadow Fae to ever live. She ruled this realm for 3,000 years before. He stopped, pain crossing his features. Before she fell in love with a human man. My father. Your father. She met him in the mortal realm on a diplomatic mission, and despite every law, every expectation, she chose him, chose love over duty. Andrew turned back to face her, and in his eyes, Trisha saw an ocean of grief. I was her guardian, her personal protector for over 1,000 years. When she told me she was pregnant, that she planned to give birth in the mortal realm and raise her child there in secret, His voice broke. I should have stopped her, should have convinced her to stay where we could protect her. What happened to her? She died giving birth to you. Your father, he didn't survive either. Shadow Fae magic is too powerful for human bodies to withstand, and the birth channeled all your mother's power into you to keep you alive. It burned through both of them. Tears spilled down Trisha's cheeks. She'd grown up in foster care, bouncing from home to home, always wondering why she'd been abandoned. She'd created 100 different stories in her head about parents who couldn't keep her, who'd made the hard choice to give her up. But this was so much worse. They hadn't abandoned her. They died for her. So I killed them. No. Andrew crossed the room in 2 strides, kneeling before her chair so their eyes were level. Your mother made a choice. She knew the risks, and she chose you anyway. She loved you more than her own life. He reached up, wiping away her tears with surprising gentleness. And she made me promise to protect you, to keep you hidden until you were strong enough to claim your birthright. My birthright? You mean? You're the rightful heir to the Shadow Throne, Trisha. When King Malachar dies, and as immortals go, he's ancient, the crown should pass to you. No, that's insane! I can't rule a realm I didn't even know existed until an hour ago. I know it's overwhelming, but you have time to learn, to grow into your power. His hand cupped her cheek, and that pull in her chest intensified until she felt like she might shatter from it. You're stronger than you know, Trisha. I've watched you survive things that would have broken others. You have your mother's courage. You've been watching me all my life. I know how that sounds, but I swore an oath to your mother. I couldn't let anything happen to you. Is that all it was? An oath? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Andrew's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and she saw the struggle in his eyes, the desire to tell her the truth warring with the fear of what that truth might mean. No, that's not all it was. Before she could respond, before she could process the admission, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Andrew's hand dropped from her face as he rose, his expression shifting back to the cold mask he'd worn in the throne room. Enter. The door opened to reveal a young woman with auburn hair and worried green eyes. She bowed quickly, her gaze darting between Andrew and Trisha. My lord, forgive the intrusion, but Lady Vesper has called an emergency council session. She's demanding that the mortal girl be brought before them immediately for questioning. I invoked the right of sanctuary. The king granted me 3 days. Yes, my lord, but Lady Vesper claims to have evidence that the girl is an immediate threat. She's convinced enough of the council that they've overridden the king's ruling. The woman's eyes filled with genuine concern as she looked at Trisha. I'm sorry, my lord. You have 1 hour to present her to the council chamber, or they'll come for her themselves. Andrew's jaw clenched, shadows swirling around his hands in response to his anger. For a moment, Trisha thought he might refuse, might start a war right there in his quarters. But then he took a breath, and the shadows settled. Tell them we'll be there. The woman bowed again and hurried out. The moment the door closed, Andrew turned back to Trisha, his expression urgent. Listen to me carefully. Vesper is going to try to provoke you, to make your magic flare out of control so she can claim you're dangerous. You need to stay calm, no matter what she says. I don't even know how to control this magic. What if I can't stop it? Andrew took both her hands in his, and that purple light flickered to life between them, weaving through their joined fingers like threads of starlight. You can. Your magic responds to your emotions, which means you can learn to control it through your will. He squeezed her hands gently. And you won't be alone. I'll be right there beside you. Why are you helping me? If I'm the heir to the throne, doesn't that make me your future queen? Your ruler? It makes you much more than that, Trisha. But we don't have time for that conversation now. We need to get you ready to face the council. He found her proper clothing, a dress of deep purple that seemed to be made from shadows themselves, fitting her perfectly despite never being measured. When Trisha looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The dress brought out the color of her eyes, made her look powerful and regal, instead of like the frightened bookstore clerk she'd been just hours ago. I look like someone else. You look like yourself, like who you were always meant to be. They walked together through the palace, and this time, Trisha held her head high despite the fear churning in her stomach. She could feel eyes on her from every shadow, could sense the weight of expectation and judgment. But Andrew never left her side, his presence a solid anchor in this strange new world. The council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less imposing. A circular table dominated the space, with 7 seats arranged around it. King Malachar sat at the head, with Vesper to his right. The other seats were occupied by immortals whose faces ranged from curious to hostile. 2 guards stood at attention beside a single empty chair clearly meant for Trisha, a chair placed not at the table but several feet away, positioned like that of an accused criminal. How kind of you to join us, Lord Andrew. Vesper's smile was all teeth and no warmth. And you've dressed your little mortal in shadow silk. How appropriate. Lady Vesper, I understand you have concerns you wish to address. Concerns? I have evidence, Lord Andrew. Evidence that your ward is not the innocent victim you claim. Vesper stood, producing a crystal orb that pulsed with sickly green light. She placed it on the table, and images began to form within. Images of Trisha in the mortal realm, going about her daily life. But in each image, there was something else. A shadow that followed her, watching from windows, from darkened alleys, from the corners of rooms. For months, this girl has been tracked by a shadow walker, a creature of pure darkness that feeds on souls. They don't follow random mortals, Lord Andrew. They're drawn to power, to magic that bleeds into the mortal realm. Vesper's eyes gleamed with triumph. This girl has been leaking shadow magic for months, creating a beacon that any dark creature could follow straight to her. She's a liability. Trisha's breath caught. She remembered those shadows, the feeling of being watched that had plagued her for the past year. She'd thought it was paranoia, anxiety from too many late nights alone in the bookstore. But it had been real. Something had been hunting her. I didn't know. I didn't even know magic existed. Ignorance is not innocence, girl. Your very existence puts this realm at risk. Vesper leaned forward, her expression calculating. But perhaps there's a solution. If you were to bond with someone of pure Shadow Fae blood, their magic could stabilize yours, contain it. I have a nephew who would be suitable. No. The word cut through the chamber like a blade. Andrew moved to stand directly behind Trisha's chair, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. The touch sent that purple light cascading over both of them, visible to everyone in the room. She will bond with no one except her true mate. Gasps echoed around the table. King Malachar leaned forward, his ancient eyes widening. Andrew, are you saying... Trisha is my fated mate. She has been since the moment she was born. The chamber erupted in chaos. Voices overlapped, some angry, some shocked, others excited. But Trisha heard none of it. She twisted in her chair to look up at Andrew, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break free from her chest. What? His silver eyes met hers, and in them she saw 23 years of longing, of watching from afar, of loving someone he could never claim because she'd been a child, then a teenager, then a young woman who didn't know he existed. I've known from the moment your mother placed you in my arms as an infant. The mating bond snapped into place then, and I've carried it ever since. His hand moved to cup her face. I watched you grow up, watched you become this incredible woman, and every day I stayed away because you deserve to have a normal life. You deserve to choose your own path. This is an outrage! Vesper slammed her hand on the table. You cannot bond with the heir to the throne. The power imbalance would be catastrophic. The bond exists whether we acknowledge it or not, Lady Vesper. I'm simply stating the truth. Then prove it. Prove before this council that she is truly your mate and not some convenient claim to protect your position. Gladly. Andrew pulled Trisha to her feet, turning her to face him fully. The purple light between them had grown brighter, pulsing in time with both their heartbeats. He took her hands, and Trisha felt magic surge through her, not her own, but his, dark and powerful and infinite. By the old laws, a mating bond can only be proven through the joining of souls. If Trisha accepts me, if she calls my magic to hers willingly, the bond will manifest for all to see. I don't know how... Yes, you do. You've felt it since the moment our eyes met in the throne room. That pull, that recognition. Trust it. Trust me. Trisha closed her eyes, focusing on that feeling in her chest, that string that tied her to him. She pulled on it, and Andrew's magic rushed to meet hers. The purple light exploded around them, and Trisha felt herself lifted off the ground as their combined power created a vortex of shadow and starlight. She heard screaming, felt the wind of magic whipping around them. But all that mattered was Andrew's hands in hers and the feeling of rightness that flooded through every cell of her body. When the light finally faded, they stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by scorch marks on the stone floor. But the most striking change was visible on their bodies, matching marks that glowed silver beneath their skin, spiraling from their hearts down their arms and meeting at their clasped hands. The mate mark, undeniable proof of a fated bond. The chamber was silent, except for the sound of heavy breathing. By the old gods, King Malachar whispered. I haven't seen a mating bond that powerful in centuries. Vesper's face had gone white, then red, with fury. This changes nothing. She's still a half-blood, still a danger. Enough, Lady Vesper. Andrew's voice carried an authority that made even the king sit straighter. Trisha is my mate, the daughter of Queen Nadia and the rightful heir to this throne. Anyone who threatens her threatens me. And I promise you, Lady Vesper, you do not want me as your enemy. The council recognizes the mating bond between Lord Andrew and Lady Trisha. King Malachar stood, and despite his age, he moved with grace. As heir to the throne, Lady Trisha, you are entitled to quarters in the royal wing, a seat on this council, and all privileges afforded to a princess of the Shadow Realm. Trisha's head spun. Princess, mate, heir. The words felt surreal, impossible. Just this morning, she'd been worried about paying her electric bill and whether the bookstore would make enough sales to keep her employed. Now she was royalty in a magical realm she'd never known existed. But when she looked at Andrew, at the mate mark glowing on his skin that matched hers, at the expression of fierce devotion in his silver eyes, something inside her settled. This was insane and terrifying, but it was also right. He was right. I accept the council's recognition, Your Majesty, but I have much to learn about this realm and my responsibilities. Of course, my dear. Lord Andrew will guide you. The king's expression softened with something like fondness as he looked at Andrew. I knew your mother well, child. She would be proud of the woman you've become. The formal meeting adjourned, but Vesper's parting look promised that this battle was far from over. As the council members filed out, Trisha sagged against Andrew, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Is it always going to be like this? Power plays and politics and people trying to kill me? For a while, yes. Vesper has wanted the throne for herself for centuries, and now she knows you stand in her way. He wrapped an arm around her waist, supporting her weight. But you won't face it alone. Never alone. They returned to his quarters, and Trisha collapsed onto a sofa near the silver fire. Andrew sat beside her, close enough that their mate marks hummed with proximity. Now that the adrenaline had faded, Trisha found herself studying him, really looking at him for the first time. He was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with sharp features and eyes that had seen centuries pass. But there was kindness in his expression too, and a vulnerability he'd shown only to her. You've been watching me for 23 years. Yes. What was I like as a child? A genuine smile crossed his face, transforming him. Brave. Even as a little girl, you were fearless. You'd climb trees that terrified the other children, would stand up to bullies 3 times your size. His expression grew distant with memory. You were 8 when you told your foster parents you wanted to be a librarian so you could help people find the stories they needed. Even then, you understood the power of books. I don't remember that. You were so strong, Trisha. Growing up in the system, bouncing from home to home, it would have broken most people. But you just kept getting back up, kept finding joy in small things. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. There were nights I wanted to interfere, to make things easier for you, but I couldn't. The wards protecting you required that you live as a normal human. Any major magical intervention would have alerted anyone searching for you. Like Vesper. She's been searching for Nadia's child since the day your mother died. If she'd found you as a child before your magic manifested, before the mating bond, could be claimed. He stopped, jaw clenching. I would have died before letting her harm you. Trisha shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. The mate mark pulsed with contentment at the contact, and she felt his magic reach out to wrap around hers like a protective embrace. What happens now? Now we train you. Your magic is powerful but raw. You need to learn control, learn the history of this realm, learn court politics. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, the gesture so natural it made her chest ache. And we bond properly. The mate marks are proof of our connection, but the full soul bond requires a ceremony. A ceremony? Don't worry, it's not as formal as it sounds. Just you, me, and the binding of our souls for eternity. Oh, is that all? They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the silver flames dance. But the peace was short-lived. A distant boom shook the palace, causing books to tumble from shelves and the fire to flicker. Andrew was on his feet instantly, shadows swirling around him like living armor. Stay here. Not a chance. Another boom, closer this time. Trisha felt her magic respond to the threat, that purple light igniting beneath her skin. Andrew looked at her, and she saw the moment he realized arguing would be pointless. Then stay close to me. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They rushed through the corridors, following the sound of destruction. Other immortals ran past them, some toward the threat, others away from it. Finally, they reached a courtyard where a massive hole had been torn in the palace wall. Standing in the center of the destruction was a creature that made Trisha's blood run cold. A shadow walker, just like the ones that had been hunting her in the mortal realm. But this one was enormous, easily 20 feet tall and made of writhing darkness. And standing beside it, smiling with cruel satisfaction, was Vesper. Did you really think I'd accept defeat so easily, Lord Andrew? Vesper's laugh was sharp and brittle. I simply led your little mortal here myself. She's been my beacon all along. You've been feeding her location to shadow walkers. You broke sacred law. Laws are for those with something to lose. I'm simply clearing my path to the throne. She gestured, and the shadow walker lunged toward Trisha. Andrew moved to intercept, his shadows forming a barrier, but the creature was too strong. It crashed through his defenses, forcing him back. Trisha watched in horror as the man, her mate, was thrown across the courtyard, slamming into a pillar hard enough to crack the stone. Andrew! The shadow walker turned its attention to her, moving with terrifying speed. Trisha had no training, no idea how to use her magic. Deliberately. But as the creature's claws descended toward her, something inside her broke free. All the fear, all the anger, all the confusion of the past hours erupted outward as pure power. Purple light exploded from her body in a shockwave that sent the shadow walker flying backward. But she didn't stop there. Trisha could feel her mother's power flowing through her veins, ancient and vast and terrifying. She raised her hands, and shadows answered her call. Not the hungry, twisted shadows of the walker, but clean shadows that obeyed her will. You threaten my mate. You threaten my realm. I am Trisha, daughter of Queen Nadia, and I will not be anyone's victim. The shadows wrapped around the shadow walker, crushing it like a giant fist. The creature shrieked, a sound that made everyone in the courtyard cover their ears. And then it simply dissolved into ash. Trisha turned to Vesper, and she saw the older woman's confidence crack for the first time. No, this isn't possible. You had no training. I had 23 years of survival. That's all the training I need. Vesper tried to run, but Trisha's shadows caught her, holding her in place. King Malachar arrived with guards, taking in the scene with wide eyes, the destroyed Shadow Walker, Vesper caught in magical bonds, and Trisha standing in the center of it all, glowing with power. Lady Vesper, you stand accused of conspiracy, of breaking sacred law, and of attempted murder against the heir to the throne. How do you plead? Vesper said nothing, her face twisted with rage and defeat. Then by the power vested in me as king of the Shadow Realm, I sentence you to exile in the Void Realm. You will have no magic, no power, and you will never return to this place. Guards stepped forward, and Vesper was dragged away screaming curses, but Trisha barely heard them. She was already running toward Andrew, who had pushed himself upright, one hand pressed to his ribs. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Immortals are hard to break. He pulled her into his arms, ignoring his injuries. You were magnificent. Your mother would have been so proud. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't let it hurt you. The mating bond. It magnifies protective instincts, gives you access to power you didn't know you had. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. You saved us all, Trisha. King Malachar approached, his expression one of deep respect. Well done, princess. You've proven yourself worthy of your mother's legacy. He turned to Andrew. And you've done well, old friend. Nadia would be grateful for all you've sacrificed to protect her daughter. It was never a sacrifice, Your Majesty. It was always love. The words hung in the air between them, and Trisha felt tears slip down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming rightness of everything. This strange realm, this impossible magic, this mate who'd loved her from afar for her entire life. I love you too. I think I've loved you since the moment I saw you in that throne room. The mating bond recognizes what the heart already knows. He kissed her then, there in the destroyed courtyard surrounded by witnesses, and Trisha felt their magic merge completely. The mate marks blazed so bright that everyone had to look away, and when the light finally faded, Trisha understood that she was forever changed. Not just by the magic, not just by the revelation of her heritage, but by this man who had devoted his entire existence to keeping her safe. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Trisha trained with Andrew every morning, learning to control her shadow magic, to call it and dismiss it at will. She attended council meetings, slowly understanding the complex politics of the Shadow Realm. And she began to plan their bonding ceremony. Not the political event the court wanted, but an intimate gathering that would truly join their souls. On the night of the full moon, or rather, the night when all three of the realm's moons aligned, Trisha stood in a sacred grove wearing a gown of starlight. Andrew waited for her at the center of a circle of ancient stones, dressed in formal armor that made him look every inch the warrior lord he was, but his eyes held only warmth as she approached. You're beautiful. You've said that 3 times tonight. I'll say it 3,000 more times before the night is through. The ceremony was conducted by King Malachar himself, using words older than memory. Trisha and Andrew spoke vows that bound not just their lives, but their souls, their magic intertwining until there was no telling where one ended and the other began. When they kissed to seal the bond, power erupted from them both, transforming the grove into a garden of shadow and starlight that would bloom for centuries to come. Later, As they lay together in their new shared quarters, Trisha traced the mate mark on Andrew's chest. It had changed since the ceremony, becoming more intricate, more beautiful. I never imagined my life would turn out like this. Regrets? Not even one. She propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at him. What do we do now? Now we live. We rule when the time comes. We protect this realm and each other. He pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead. And we love each other for eternity and beyond. That sounds perfect. As Trisha drifted off to sleep in her mate's arms, surrounded by the magic of a realm she never knew existed, she thought about the mortal girl she'd been just days ago. That girl had been alone, uncertain, hiding in books because reality was too harsh. But that girl had carried within her the strength of queens and the power of ancient magic. She just needed someone to see it. Someone who'd watched over her every night, crossing realms just to ensure she was safe. She'd been sleeping unaware in the mortal realm while the Shadow Lord crossed realms every night to watch her. But she wasn't unaware anymore. She knew exactly who she was meant to be, and who she was meant to love. And that was the most powerful magic of all. Did you like this story? Make sure to subscribe for more.